Let's go to Cairo, Egypt first, where supporters and opponents of Egypt's deposed President Mohamed Morsi took to the streets on Friday to show their respective support and disdain for the military's coup. Now, Egypt's top military man, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, had called for his supporters to strengthen the military mandate to stop, quote, violence and terrorism, a not-so-veiled term referring to the actions of the Muslim Brotherhood. Many supporting Sisi's stance gathered in Tahrir Square by the afternoon as more people joined thousands of Morsi supporters in Nasser City. Health ministry sources say 24 people were injured in clashes, and the military said that Morsi was being detained for 15 days pending investigations on allegations of him spying for the Palestinian political group Hamas. Here to break all of this down for us, live from Egypt, is Sharif Quddus, an independent journalist and fellow at the Nation Institute, and Dalia Mogahed, CEO of Mogahed Consulting. Thank you both for joining us. I know it's a busy day. Sharif, perhaps you could start by telling us where you are, where you've been, and what the mood is on the ground. People have been expecting a lot of violence, as you know.
Well, I just came back from the anti-Morsi rally in Tahrir Square, where there's thousands of people coming down and answering Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's call to, quote unquote, give him a mandate to combat what he called terrorism. And there's a lot of kind of army worship there. There's APCs that are stationed outside, a very heavy military presence, helicopters swooping overhead, and people are kind of taking pictures with the soldiers and this kind of thing. So, I spoke to a bunch of people there, and they, many of them, uncritically kind of call the Muslim Brotherhood terrorists and want them to clear the Rabaa sit-in. So it's a very dangerous kind of atmosphere, this idea of giving people, or the army, this mandate to crack down on the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm planning on going to the Rabaa sit-in later this evening. But I also went, interestingly, to another place that's calling itself the Third Square, where people are standing against both the Brotherhood and the army. And they say they're continuing what they call the January 25th revolution against these kind of two forces that have brought Egypt into this political crisis that we're facing.
Sharif, we just showed one of your photos from Twitter of that small square that you're describing, but you've been tweeting all day, and there's one tweet in particular that actually caught my attention. Right here, you say Egypt's free media channels will suspend programming to promote pro-military protests, and Al Shuruk bans anti-military articles. If you couple that with some of the other images you've been sharing with us, for example, this one where you write the caption, "Army and Sisi worship all over Tahrir and surrounding streets as people are taking photos in front of the APCs," why is there such an outpouring of support for the military, and is there?
No, I think there is. I mean, I think that's undeniable that some portion of the population is welcoming the army's return back into the helm of the political sphere with applause, which is very discouraging because, as we know, the military, it was the backbone of autocracy in Egypt for 60 years. When they ruled the country after Mubarak's ouster, they put 12,000 civilians on military trial. They killed protesters on the streets, detained many of them, and they have a huge economic empire that they want to protect. The fact that so many people, after just a year of Mohamed Morsi being in office, are welcoming now this force to come back, I think speaks to the failures of the Muslim Brotherhood, the failures of Mohamed Morsi over this year. There's no question he faced significant obstacles to overcome, but they chose, instead of kind of addressing people's grievances, they saw politics as sort of some elite machination that they need to deal with elements of the deep state. They tried to placate the police, they tried to placate the army, and when those forces turned on him, there was no one left standing by him because he hadn't addressed those grievances.
And when we talk about those grievances in particular, Dalia, I want to just share with our audience, you wrote this blog post just yesterday. It went up at the Huffington Post, "Winning Egypt's Long War with Extremism," and you're calling what General Sisi said in his speech like a scene from The Dictator, rather than something from real life, addressing cheering crowds, as you write, in his full military fatigue and Gamal Abdel Nasser sunglasses on Wednesday. What are you referring to, and what motivated you to kind of focus on the military?
Well, I thought that the call for demonstrations at such a heightened time of tension was, the least I could say, it was irresponsible. It was the last thing the country needed at a time when it needs to heal and work on reconciliation rather than heightening tensions. And it was very concerning to see Abdel Fattah al-Sisi asking people to demonstrate, to give him a public mandate to fight terrorism. Because, of course, as we know, the head of Egypt's security apparatus doesn't need demonstrators to give him a public mandate to go after criminals. But he does need the theatrics of public support to wipe out an entire political segment of society, one that makes up at least, by the most conservative estimates, a quarter of Egyptian society. So it seemed that he was exploiting people's legitimate anger and exploiting the tension and division in the country to get this political cover,
right,
to wipe out a segment of society. And I felt that the scene of him calling people to demonstrate, a military leader calling people to go out to Tahrir, it's reminiscent of what we would hear from other dictators, and it was just very concerning to me, and it does not bode well for where this transition is heading.
And when we talk about where this transition is heading, Dalia, I appreciate you trying to move it along. A lot of people questioning, our friend Sharif Hisham Hilayat wrote a piece where he questions what the real motivation was behind not just the call by the general, the military's top man, but also the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, what is the purpose of these protests? Is the military trying to consolidate its power and prove to those Egyptians who might still be skeptical as to whether it was a coup or not, that they do have popular support? I mean, why the protests?
I mean, I think we can only speculate, but I think we have to note that it came also on this morning is the first day that they leveled any kind of formal charges against Morsi. I think it's got to do with the negotiations that are happening. The Muslim Brotherhood has publicly stated over and over that it's not involved in any negotiations, and a precondition is a reversal of the coup, that Morsi comes back and they reinstate parliament and all of that. But the many sources have said that they are involved in these negotiations, and I think it's a harbinger of what might come in the next few days. The potential for violence is high. Like Dalia said, it was a very irresponsible move. The army claimed that it came into the streets to prevent civil war, and now it's also in some way giving a mandate to people to engage in kind of violence. There's been violence from both sides, I think. Right. It has to be noted. Pro-Morsi supporters are armed as well. I've seen it myself, some attack people. They've come under very fierce attack, and the bloodiest day was when over 50 of them were killed by the army. So it's a very volatile situation. But I think the coming days will be very telling, and whether the army thinks that, they gave this 48-hour deadline yesterday, saying to the Muslim Brotherhood and to either join the process, the transitional process, and national reconciliation. Otherwise, well, they didn't say what otherwise meant. Right. But I would assume that would entail a crackdown on them and kind of, pushing them out of the political sphere completely. And
for those who don't know, I mean, there has been a crackdown, not just on the Brotherhood members who've been arrested, but also Islamist TV stations. And, it's another 48-hour ultimatum, so to speak. Of course, that was the first one that led to all this. I just want to quickly have you comment, Sharif, on this photo you tweeted. It shows General Sisi, Gamal Abdel Nasser, and then also Obama down here. If you could translate this for us, it says, Al-Jaysh wa-Sha'b Eid Wahda, the people, the military and the army rather, and the people, one hand. But then it also shows Obama in a diaper. This is being sold where, and what's the significance of this?
This was being sold outside the Tahrir Square. I mean, there's a lot of this kind of, as I said, military worship, reviving the ghost of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who first, cracked down on the Brotherhood in 1954 and drove the movement underground and imprisoned and executed thousands of them. So there's this kind of revival and myth, of Sisi reclaiming Abdel Nasser's legacy. And this is the kind of authoritarianism, I think, that Egyptians first went into the streets January 25th and started this revolution to reject. And it's disconcerting now that we have these two kind of forces that are battling each other now, the Muslim Brotherhood and the army, both kind of going for a zero-sum game in some ways, that they're both pushing themselves outside, and there's many of the people that I know who, what I call revolutionary youth are staying at home today, are very depressed about what is happening. They do not see this as a fight that they want to engage in. And, it doesn't bode well for the coming days with this increasing levels of violence in the streets.
Right.
And also, as Delia said, you can't just push out the biggest political group in Egypt and expect the political transition to go smoothly.
Of course.
I would dispute her contention that they represent a quarter of the population. I mean, if we look at the first round of the presidential election, which I think is the most indicative, Morsi got 5.7 million votes. But they are certainly.
We should say it's a country of 82 million, over 80 million.
Right, but they certainly are the largest political force, and to try and erase them from the political sphere, I think, is suicidal for Egypt's political stability.
Right, and because, Dalia, there's a point of contention there, I do want to just pull an excerpt from your blog post. This is what you wrote, and I'd love for you to kind of extrapolate a little bit for us. Unless Egypt's military junta decisively corrects its current course and pursues a peaceful, inclusive, and reconciliatory approach to putting Egypt back on a democratic path, it will be feeding rather than draining militants' ideological fuel. Dalia, moving forward, where can we expect the military to go? Do you think they're going to bring the Muslim Brotherhood into the fold or continue the crackdown?
Well, I would hope that they would bring them back into the fold. And where I got the 25% is in fact, in the first round of elections, Morsi got around a quarter of the vote. And that's where I based that number on. But really, regardless, they are a segment of the population that can't be ignored. Why I say that if the military goes back to a Nasser approach to dealing with the Brotherhood, that they will be fueling rather than draining the ideological fuel of extremism, is because it was under Nasser that al-Qaeda was born. It was born in the prisons of Egypt, not in the caves of Afghanistan, with people like Sayyid Qutb, who were radicalized in prison, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who turned to militancy in the same confines. And so this approach of cracking down, which is what it seems to me the military is asking for public support to do, is going to have the exact opposite effect of fighting terrorism.
Right.
Whereas after January 25th, former militants, as well as other Islamists who had denounced violence, used the political process to push for their goals rather than violence.
And it remains to be seen where the political process will lead, of course, but the world will be watching. And I want to thank you both for taking the time to join us here at HuffPost Live.